have to play this right now. I was just starting this video, man. So welcome to part 6, I reckon, of 40 years in question mark minutes, the vlog. So I believe at the end of part 5, we were just about to move to Virginia. That was 2004. May 1st, 2004. What a crazy day that was, though. Oh, man. Well, one thing I forgot to mention, actually, about the end of 2003, I know I'm always going back here, and like, man, dude, can you stay straight? Is that I rediscovered Final Fantasy X right towards the end of 2003. So I have some weird memories of, like, playing that, making tapes and leaving the recorder up to record the Mount Gagazet theme and then listening to that at work and it being all depressing in the middle of winter and everything. And that was also when I got X2, Final Fantasy X-2. So it's right around in the middle of those crazy times I was playing that game. Basically, the way my setup was, you know, I didn't have like a sofa or anything. Basically, I had a mattress on the floor and I sat on that mattress and I had the TV propped up on a shelf and just played it off the TV. It was like a really small TV. I think it was the same TV we had in the attic that I played Mario Sunshine on. It's like the really small one with the weird speakers and all. But yeah, it was good times. Okay, I have no idea why you turned off there. I just looked down and suddenly the screen was blank and I was like, what? So how much did I miss there? Jeez. Anyway, the battery's totally full, so it's not that. I don't know. Anyway, wheeling 106 miles. Yeah, we got a ways to go. So how much of that did I miss? Basically what I was talking about there was something, well, I was talking about how I thought I saw Michelle crying after she walked away, after she gave me the card and the plushy dog, and I was talking about how I wondered if, you know, if there was really something there. And then I got to talking about how, you know, it's like, is it any worse to know that you blew it than it is to just not know, period? You know, it's like, I'll probably always wonder whether or not I blew it there by leaving. But, you know, it's like, I guess if I could find her, I could ask her, but because if it turns out that I did blow it, I don't think it's any worse to know that now than it is to just have to wonder. You know, the wondering is the worst part, really. But everything in my life is always, oh, I wonder if this, if that, you know. So that morning, I remember stopping by, on 47, there's a Shopko out there. I went in there and I got myself one of those big atlas books, the map books. You know, because back then, we didn't have, like, I mean, maybe we did have GPSs and stuff back then, but I didn't. So, you know, I was just doing it old school, mapping out the best way to get there. So after I bought the book, then I stopped by Dad's house. Now, at the time, you know what, I actually did talk about this, too. At the time, he was living in a little house on Curtis Street. I have a video about this, I know I do. Because I remember I was walking outside of the car place while I was getting my car fixed and talking about it then, about how I moved to Virginia and how I hugged Dad that day. But I mean, I guess I'll tell it again here because it's part of the story. Yeah, I stopped by Dad's place and hung out with him one last time a little bit before leaving. And I had my last power bill with me. And I had to call Wisconsin Energies to tell them to turn off my power that morning. You know, it's like, okay, I'm not living here anymore, so then I gave them my address to tell them where to send my last bill and all that. So anyway, yeah, I don't remember what the weather was like. It's pretty much perfect, though. And, yep. So, and then just, you know, when we were done hanging out, I just walked out to my car, and it was like, okay, it's the beginning of my journey. Now, at the time, it's like I was telling people that I was going down to Virginia to go to college to be a screenwriter, you know, and that's probably what Dad thought I was doing. And so maybe that's why we got along as well as we did that day, because it's like I was finally doing what I should have been doing all this time and going to college and all that. So I walked out of my car and Dad followed me out there and, you know, we said goodbye and I actually gave him a hug. And it's extremely rare that we ever did that, you know. I think once I start to put my tapes up, you'll understand a little more about how awkward I felt you know, around him all the time. And it wasn't just him, it was everybody, but especially him, just because I don't think he really understood that much. But anyway, whatever. But yeah. But I'll tell you what, though, I think me and Dad were never closer than we were those last few months. Because he actually tried to talk me out of it. He actually asked me if I would get together with him at McDonald's one afternoon just to sit down and talk about it, and I was like, I didn't want to do it because I knew he was going to try to talk me out of it, and that's exactly what he did. He didn't want me to go either, you know. And he pretty much had figured it out that, you know, that going to college to become a screenwriter wasn't my only reason for leaving. I was just trying to get away from the situation, so. You know, he asked me if that's the only reason you're doing it, then you shouldn't do it, you know. That's what he was telling me. But I told him that's not the only reason I'm doing it. I have other things, you know. And for the most part, the whole screenwriter thing was kind of a front. But at the same time, there was no reason, you know, I was thinking to myself, well, I could do it anyway. I could just go to school and become a screenwriter anyway. Even if that wasn't in the immediate plans, it was something that I'd always dreamed of doing. Screenwriting is something I've always wanted to do. And I had a screenplay written up about my whole situation there and everything, and wow, I still have that screenplay, but man, it's crap. I mean, you can't make a movie. See, here's the thing. Like, if you're a screenwriter and you're trying to write a movie, don't write a movie about how much your life sucks. You know, expecting people to watch it and feel sorry for you, because that is not the way to do it. It's just not. Like, people will pick up on it right away that, oh, this guy's just trying to get something off his chest, and he's doing it through a movie. You know, and it's not like, you know, my home situation and all that was the only thing happening in the movie. There was like a love story with Becky on the side, and there was a whole thing with me like not wanting to go to my dad's wedding because of stuff. So that's another thing that happened. That was actually in October of 2003. My dad got married to Teresa. Remember how I said before Marty and Teresa did the karaoke show? Well, it turned out Marty was kind of abusive. You know, none of us really realized that, I guess. And one night, he went to hit her, and Dad just couldn't take it. And Dad kicked the shit out of him. And from then on, Dad and Teresa were together, and it was like all of my fantasies that I've ever had. You know that fantasy that Jim Carrey has in Dumb and Dumber, where he kicks the guy's ass and the girl's all like, oh my god, you're so good. You know, it's like every guy fantasizes about things like that, and Dad got to live that. Literally, he got to live that fantasy of kicking a guy's ass for being abusive to his wife. Anyway, he ended up marrying Teresa. And I admit, I was kind of jealous, you know, of him getting to do that. You know, it's like, oh, not everybody gets to live a knight in shining armor tale like that. And here's the other thing, you know, it's like, I had this thing, oh god, that's a cop, and I'm going 78. Anyway, he's not, okay, I don't think he's coming after me. Here's the thing, and I know it's stupid to think like this, but, you know, you are the product of your parents, you know, your mom and dad. They came together and had you, and that love between your parents is the reason that you exist, right? So when you know, and I had been through this before. I'd watch Mom get remarried to Steve, and then I watched Dad get remarried to Deborah. You know, and I didn't want to go to this wedding in October of 2003 with Dad and Teresa. I didn't want to go to it because I was tired of it. I was tired of seeing. What am I really saying there? All I'm really saying is just that it felt like that love is the reason that I exist. I didn't want to see it get buried like that. I didn't want to see it get stomped into the ground, you know, by all these successive marriages, and that's what was happening there, and I didn't want to go to the wedding because of that. So that's part of what's in the screenplay too. There's a whole conflict there where I don't want to go to, and of course at the end of the movie I end up going anyway, and I put this big speech out there, and I'm like, oh, you know, happy for you and whatever, you know, and then I sing Why Don't You and I by Santana on karaoke, and then I kiss Becky, and the end, you know, and that's it. So because of the time, it was more her. I wrote the screenplay more when I was like in love with her and before Michelle came along, so whatever. Anyway, wow, I haven't even started on the move to Virginia yet. Yeah, so I hugged Dad May 1st, 2004 that morning, and I took off. I took off in my car and started the journey and turned left from Bell Street onto South 41, and there I was on my way. From Neenah, Wisconsin to Midlothian, Virginia. A 20-hour drive. Oh, and here's the other thing. It's like, I couldn't get out of work. It's like I had to quit my job and all. I had to give 2-week notice. So if I wanted to move on May 1st, there was like a certain day that I had to give my notice. And of course, me being the dumbass that I am, waited until the last possible minute. So I actually had to work the night of April 30th going into May 1st. So here I was at my dad's place. I had just worked the night before, so I'd been awake since like 10 o'clock the previous night. It was about 1 in the afternoon now. And after I'd done work, after I'd gotten done with work, I came home and did all this cleaning, scrubbing the walls, scrubbing the floor, scrubbing the blinds, just anything I could find to do to try to get as much of that security deposit back as I could, which I didn't get any of it back because they had, well, yeah, it wasn't all their fault, but a lot of it was. Like I don't know what he did to the door in my bathroom. Something, he messed with the doorknob, and so it completely came off, so I had to pay for that. And they made this huge hole in the wall, so I don't even know how it got there, but it was like a hole about the size of a doorknob, that hole itself. So, and it ended up, I had to pay off this extra $600 in addition to not getting my security deposit back. And I had another $600 to pay on top of that, and I had to do that from Virginia. And it was just like, oh, and I had my car payment on top of that. And I didn't have a job, and I was like, oh, well, I did get a job eventually, but we'll get to that. So I took off May 1st. And about an hour down the road, I remember this is the only time this has ever happened to me. About an hour down the road, I was driving down the highway just like I am now, and I tried to get into the left lane, and there was somebody in my blind spot, and I almost hit him. They honked their horn, and I got out of the way like just in time, but boy, it scared the crap out of me. It's like, oh my god, man, I'm getting thirsty now. I'm gonna stop for a drink somewhere here pretty soon. But yeah, man, I tell you. So that was fun. The other thing that I remember the most about that drive, and this sounds so stupid, because I had a bunch of CDs that Mike had sent to me, and all these albums like Splinter by The Offspring and Yellow Card, their album with Only One and 23 on it, and what else was there? He sent me a Perfect Circle. I don't remember which album it was, but it was 2004-ish. Wow, look at this. Holy crap. We're like in the valley. This is like some Final Fantasy 15 shit right here. Anyway, he sent me a bunch of stuff, man. He sent me like Josh Groban. Never really got into that one. Sorry to any Josh Groban fans out there. But one of them that he sent to me, I never got around to listening to, was by Nelly Furtado. She did that song, I'm Like a Bird. Well, she had a second album after that, and she had a song called Powerless that was sort of popular, but not really that much. Anyway, well, this CD, I put it in about an hour or 2 hours into my journey to Virginia. And the first song on that album is called One Trick Pony. Just blew my mind. And for the first, 2 weeks that I was living in Virginia, I was going around singing that song. Oh my god. It's such a good song. I'm surprised that's not on my phone, as it should be. But yeah, every time I hear that song now, I'm going to think about that day, that morning that I drove off. But it's like I said, I'd had to work the night before, so I'd been awake since 10 p.m. the night before. It was currently 1 p.m. in the afternoon that I was leaving to start this 20-hour drive. And I guess I'd intended, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Okay, I'm doing, watch, look at this. I'm doing 83, right? And look at this. Wow, I'll tell you. Okay, anyway. Shouldn't have picked that up, actually. It's kind of veered off of the road a little bit there. Jeez, man. Yeah, so, there isn't much to say about the drive. I did the whole thing without stopping, to sleep or anything. I mean, I stopped to fill up on gas, or to get drinks or to eat or whatever. But for the most part, I did the whole trip in one go. And by the time I got to Virginia, it was the next morning. It was 9 o'clock the next morning. So I basically made the full trip in 24, 21. Yeah, it was 21 hours because 1 o'clock p.m. to 9 a.m. Well, no, that's actually 20 hours. Well, either way, it's about the same. It's about 20 hours. So, yeah. Yeah. When I first got to Virginia, I was kind of lost because, like, all I had was my little map book, and I couldn't find this tiny little road that she lived on in the map book, you know, and I looked it up, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So eventually I stopped by a gas station and actually bought, you know, a map of Richmond, like a giant one, and kind of looked over it in the car, and by then it was like, whatever. I actually did make a tape during that drive. Yeah, but it wasn't very good. The only thing I remember about that tape is that I was listening to the radio, and Return to Innocence came on the radio, and then like 15 minutes later they played it again. It's so weird. I don't know why they did that. It's like you're sitting there, hey, oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, that was horrible. I missed that last note. Anyway. Oh, man. So, yeah. Then 15 minutes later, they played again. Hey, oh, yeah, yeah. That was a little better. Anyway. Oh, man. It's so hilarious. So I finally got there, and it was so surreal. Like, I was so tired I couldn't unpack or anything. I just took off my clothes and basically collapsed into the, whatever it was, the futon that I was going to be sleeping on. And, you know, anyway, I got there and I met her and everything was good. And, you know, and basically, like, my first day there, I wrote an e-opinions review of The Bends by Radiohead. And I wrote this review despite not having heard the album in like 3 years. Yet I still could remember it that vividly that I was able to write a review about every song. And it's just, wow. When I read that review now, I'm like kind of surprised that I can remember as much as I do. It's really, it's one of my best reviews probably. Anyway. Yeah, so I kept on with the e-opinions thing, and I tried looking for a job. Fortunately, it didn't take that long. It took about a month, but eventually I got a job at Walmart. And that was pretty interesting, because I never imagined I'd be working at Walmart. You know, it's just, I mean, I don't know what people think as far as, like compared to a gas station, what is Walmart exactly? Is that a step up, or is that a step down? I don't really know. I mean, as far as the pay rate goes, I was only making, like, I guess $7.25. I don't even remember. It might have been $8. It wasn't much. It was about the same as what I made at Pick and Save when I first started there. You know, and the other thing about, you know, Pick and Save is, like, I started making time and a half on Sundays once I'd been there for 3 years, but that didn't start happening. I wasn't there for 3 years until January of 2004. So I had just started making time and a half on Sunday, and 4 months later I moved away. It's like, if I would have stayed there, I would have kept my time and a half on Sunday. But no. So I ended up moving back there, as you know, and then I had to start all over again. You know, so I had to work 3 more years to get the time and a half on Sunday back, but still, man, I tell you. Anyway. Well, yeah, so I got the job at Walmart. It's kind of a long drive there, though. I had to drive about 20 minutes to get there. But the good news is it was right across from the movie theater, so that was cool. And I remember one night after I got off, I went over to the movie theater and went to see a movie. And I actually saw somebody that I worked with from Walmart, you know, in line at the movie theater. And I was like, hey, dude, what's up? It's like, it was so cool. And it was just weird because it's like, you know, I've been sitting here working at Pick and Save for what, 3, 4, 5 years, and also going to the movies for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and not once have I seen any of them at the movies. Now I come down here to Virginia, I work at Walmart 3 months. You know, within the first 3 months, I run across, I'm kind of glad I did this, you know. And to this day, I do not regret doing that. Even though, well, you know, obviously it was doomed to fail, but we get to that. I keep saying that, we'll get to that, and I never do. There were so many little things about, you know, all those memories. Because here's the other thing. Oh, I didn't mention this. Okay, see, something that I don't believe she ever mentioned before we moved there was that she was living with a guy. I didn't know that, or if I did, if she had mentioned it, I don't know, it was just in passing or something. But yeah, she lived with a guy, and I didn't realize that. I thought she was living by herself. So when I found out she was living with a guy, there was like a little bit of adjusting to do there. Because even though the house was nice, it wasn't that huge, and you know, by the time with the three of us in there, there was, you know, a little bit of awkwardness, I will say. Plus, he was also one of these people that's like extremely quiet, like me, you know, basically. And when you put two quiet people together, usually nothing happens because they're both afraid to speak to each other, and that's how it was. She would always tell me, you know, we had the same interests and everything, and I'm totally convinced of that, we were. He was way into video games, so I remember doing a playthrough of Final Fantasy VIII while I was there. I also played Final Fantasy V, whatever version I played, the girl's name was Rihanna, R-I-E-N-A. Like, how many Rihannas can there be in the world, man? Anyway, yeah. Her real name's actually Lena, which is actually way cooler, but I don't remember if the guy was Bartz or Butts. I want to say it was Butts, actually. I guess it was the American version. I mean, if they were going to balls up the girl's name, they probably balls up the guy's name, too. By calling him Butts, you know. So they balls it up and call him Butts. Anyway. Well, so I played through that. I almost finished it, but I never did. I got to the final dungeon. I guess it was the final dungeon. I don't know. So that was cool. He also had like an Xbox down in the basement. I went down there a couple times, played some Star Wars games, and that was about. I don't even remember what they were called, but they were cool. So I just remember getting lost in the deserts of Tatooine, or Tatooine, as some people say. Yeah, it was good times. So we had the washer and dryer in the basement, and there was one time I mowed the lawn. But anyway, so things got a little complicated because here was the plan, right? I was going to move down there on May 1st, and then Mike was going to join us, you know, on July 1st. And so, well, July 1st came around, and he couldn't come down because his job kept telling him, well, you need to stay here till August or else we're not going to give you your severance package. And this is a place he had been working at for a long time, so he had this built up there. So understandably, you know, he decided to wait till August to move instead. Anyway, but in the meantime, he came down to visit, you know, him and a couple of other guys from EPNs. They all came to visit. The other guys were, shoot. One of them was named Brian. He was called Vox Pop-Tart on ePinions. This is great. I know I should be getting over here, but there's a semi in the left lane ahead of him, and he's still sitting there. Plus, there's somebody coming up behind me, too. Anyway, yeah, so we hung out, and we were basically the Ninja Turtles. I guess Vox Pop-Tart would have been Donatello, because he was like a total nerd. He was a great writer, too. And the other guy, the fourth guy, was named Cryptic Cradle. That was actually his name on ePinions, Cryptic Cradle. And every time I talked about him on a tape, I would say, that clown, Cryptic Cradle. I would call him Cryptic Cradle, that clown, with all those C's, you know? Anyway, he was cool. He was like one of these white people that acts black, you know, kind of. But he was really nice, though. So, and then Mike, he actually was black. I don't know if I mentioned that. That he came to. Brian would have been Donatello. I was probably Michelangelo. Cryptic Cradle was Raphael, and then Mike was like Leonardo, I guess. I don't know. But the thing I remember the most about their visit was like one night we sat in the backyard and we had like this totally deep intellectual discussion about the world and about reality, and it was just so weird. It's like we weren't smoking weed or anything, but man, you would think we were. I wish I'd recorded that conversation, because that's like the deepest, most profound conversation I think I've ever had. Yeah, so, but Mike's job was telling him, no, you can't have your severance package unless you stay till August, so here I was, you know, having moved to Virginia, 3 months had gone by, you know, and I was still, you know, waiting for him to come down. Anyway, sometime in the middle of August, DD, the lady I moved in with, decided to break up with her boyfriend. This is a guy that she'd been engaged to for 7 years. But 3 months after I moved into the picture, then she decides to break up with him. So something about me, I think, brings out the free will in other people, because the exact same thing happened with Mom. But we'll get to that, like I said. But it's like something, I don't know, this always seems to happen to people when they spend time with me. They realize that they have free will suddenly, you know, and that's my theory on it anyway. I mean, I don't know what else it could be. It's just that being around me, people get this idea that, like, I guess it's something about the way you know, my attitude or some of my influence just rubs off on people. It makes them realize that if they want something, all they gotta do is just go get it. They don't just sit around and think about it, which is ironic considering that's all I do practically. But, you know, think about stuff. But, yeah. So like I said, she'd been engaged to the guy for 7 years, but 3 months after I moved in, no, she's done with him. So, and I realized, you know, I noticed it right off the bat when I got there. It's not that they argued, but they just, like, they didn't really seem to have anything in common. It's like he sat in his room all the time and worked on computers or whatever, and sometimes they, like, watch movies together, but you could never hear what they were saying, and I don't know, I never really saw them having fun together doing anything. I don't know, but anyway. We did have, like, an E-Pinions meet and greet while we were there, so Mom got to come down, and a bunch of other guys, this young chink guy, Youngchinq. Yeah, so living in Virginia was fun. I worked at Walmart, I pushed carts. Working at Walmart kind of had its... I had moments where I got pretty sick of some of the stuff that happened there, but, you know, one of the biggest issues that I had when I did work there was that I never knew what I was going to be doing. You know, and as much as I say I hate predictability and all that, when you don't know what you're going to be doing that day at work, there is a bit of anxiety that comes with that. Because you think, oh God, what if today is one of those days where I hurt myself doing something because I don't know? Because there were some days I worked in furniture, there were some days I pushed carts, there were some days I brought in the load in the back area. And every day at 2:30 we all had to get there and, like, do the, what do you call those things, the pallets. We had to like lay down pallets in the back area so that when the trucks got there, it'd be easy for them to bring the loads in and all. And that was, like, kind of rough, like, because those pallets are heavy. They don't look like it, but they are. There were some days I went back there with, like, a forklift and got stuff out of the really hot shelves. I loved doing that. Yeah, there was some stuff I actually loved doing. Technically, my position was ICS, which is Inventory Control Specialist. That's what they call it. They just call it ICS. But at the end of the day, when it really comes down to it, my biggest role there was just back up. You know, it's like when they needed help somewhere, they would just call ICS to go take care of it, you know. And most of the time that ended up being in furniture or something like that. Furniture was the worst department in the store because there was basically nobody in there, you know. It's like there wasn't enough business to justify hiring someone to put in there to be in there all the time doing nothing. But then that means when somebody did come in there and they did want to buy something, first of all, somebody had to figure out, you know, that there was a customer in there, and then they had to go call somebody else who was qualified to actually do it. And a lot of times that ended up being me, and I'll tell you what, there was one day I pushed myself so hard that I, like, literally got angry. You know how when you push yourself to a certain point, you just get so angry that you'll say anything? Well, one of those days I was doing that. As I pushed this thing out there, I remember saying, if I don't burn 1,000 calories from this, I swear to God, it was something like that. I don't remember the exact words. I did lose quite a bit of weight working there, though, because a lot of the time I was outside pushing carts. Pushing carts was actually one of my favorite parts of it, because I got to go outside, and I had this thermometer thing that I stole from Dee Dee's boyfriend. I don't know if he ever noticed, but yeah, I still have it. I don't know if it works anymore, but so I would set up the thermometer, and it would get up to 89, 90 degrees, 92 degrees every day. This is the middle of summer, you know. But so I was out there pushing carts, sweating my ass off, and drinking a whole lot of water. And we had some good times. It's just, it was fun because there was like this, because I was part of a team. I wasn't on my own doing my own thing. I felt more like part of a team there than I did ever at Pick and Save. Because at Pick and Save, I was the donut fryer. It's like nobody else knew how to do that except for other donut fryers. So basically, whoever did it when I was off. So I never saw that person because they were only there when I was off, or if they were baking sometimes. But yeah, so. But at Walmart, and I was out there pushing carts, you know, we were always doing it together, like with other people. You know, we get a whole big train of them going. So there'd be like two of us, one in the middle or one in the back, and then one in the front to guide them. Because you always had to have somebody in the front to guide the train, otherwise they'd go anywhere. You know. I guess the good news was that, like, we got to push them downhill. Now, I sure hate to be at a Walmart where you had to push them uphill. That would suck. For the most part, the parking lot sloped down to the actual Walmart store, so when I pushed carts, it was always, like, downhill, which was nice. So it wasn't too bad. Sometimes I could even, like, get a train of 7 or 8 of them and just, you know, stand at the front of the carts and let them come down by themselves behind me, and all I had to do was guide them in. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, that was fun times. But it's like I said, though, in the middle of August, you know, it was 3 months in here, she decided to break up with her boyfriend. And as it turns out, she was dating someone else on ePinions, it turns out. So she basically went and did that. She moved out, and it left me in kind of an awkward position because she never said that I had to leave. She said that I could stay there, but I didn't want to live there with just the boyfriend who I barely knew. You know, I moved there because I knew her. Hang on a second. Yeah, I moved there because I knew her and we were friends and everything. So, and now all of a sudden it's like I was living there with her boyfriend. Okay, seriously. But yeah, it's like I was there, you know, alone with her boyfriend now, and Mike wasn't there. And then when August came around, and, you know, Mike was supposedly, you know, able to get a severance package if he quit, then they told him, no, so they changed their mind. I don't know why. I guess they just miscommunicated to him or something. But, you know, once August came around, he was able to move. Then they told him he couldn't move unless he stayed there till January. Like, he couldn't have a severance package unless he stayed there till January now. First it was August, then they told him January. So now I was going to be stuck here in this apartment with this total stranger, or with this house with this total stranger. You know, and he wasn't a bad guy. I think he totally wouldn't have minded having me there. But I just wish I had realized that, maybe. But I don't know, you know. But obviously this whole thing with us, me and Mike moving in with Dee Dee was completely falling apart. And I didn't know what to do, so I was looking over my options. It's like, well, do I stay here? Do I move back to Wisconsin? Do I go live with Mom in Memphis? Or do I just or do I move in with Mike in New York? Because I could have done that too. I could have just moved in with Mike. Could have done that. If I moved back into Wisconsin, I didn't really exactly have anywhere to go. You know, stay with Dad, or maybe stay with my sister wherever she was. Well, anyway, as you already know, what I ended up doing was moving in with Mom. The main reason for that was just because, I don't know, I missed her. I mean, ever since we moved away, you know, I felt like things had never really been the same after we left Georgia and came to Wisconsin. So, you and I missed her a lot, and I wanted to spend some time with her, and I thought, let's see, maybe I'll just do that. She said I was always welcome there, and I didn't really want to stay in Virginia, so I didn't want to move to New York, and I didn't know where I would stay if I moved back to Wisconsin, so I decided to move in with Mom. Just, you know, whatever. So I got all my stuff, once again, 3 months later, packed it into my car, and just kind of drove off without incident. Didn't even leave a note or anything, just left. And stopped at a hotel on the way. You know, I was basically almost flat broke at this point. I don't even know how I pulled it off. I had like one more check coming from Walmart, because then I had to quit Walmart too now. You know, and I didn't want to do that. There was this girl that actually worked in layaway that I wish I like gotten to know her better, because she was so cool. For as little time as we spent together, it's amazing that I still remember her at all. But man, it was like the way she talked to me was just crazy. I don't know what it was, you know. Just something about it just made me feel comfortable. Made me feel at ease. Made me feel at home. What is that? Oh, jeez. I was wondering what that noise was. I didn't even realize there was somebody back there. Jeez. I was worried that was my car. Thank God. Anyway. Well, anyway, so yeah, like I said, I picked up and left. Stopped at a hotel somewhere in Tennessee. I remember being shocked that the hotel was like $90 for the night. Whatever. And then wasn't there like some movie on that day? I remember staying in the hotel and seeing the movie on and thinking, oh, I'm going to remember forever that this movie was on this day. Shoot. What was that? Like Waterboy or something? I don't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So finally I got to Mom's place and I unpacked my stuff and I got set up in the back room and then started living there for a while. So, and that was good for about the first month or so. But eventually, I mean, as it would happen, look at these clouds. What are they? They look like they're descending. Is it just my imagination? Anyway. Yeah, but I had to start looking for a job because I ran out of money pretty fast when I was there. Well, I didn't want to sit around the house and mooch off of her all day, so I tried, looking for a job. I applied at Walmart there. Because at first I thought I could just get a transfer over to the other Walmart. Because they said I could do that, but something, I don't remember what happened. It didn't work out. I couldn't do it. I guess because I hadn't been there for a year or something like that. I don't know. But anyway. So, man, I applied at, Kroger. I applied at Shoney's. I applied with the city of West Memphis because they had some jobs that they could have gotten me into. And that's basically who Mom worked for. She was in the court. So she worked for the city of West Memphis. Now, West Memphis is a little different than Memphis is. Like, West Memphis, man, there was a lot of crime. At least according to Mom, there was. And if she worked in the courts, then she would know. There was a lot of crime and stuff going on in there. So, but we only lived like 15 minutes away from the bridge that crossed over into Memphis. So, a couple of times I took her over to Peabody Place and we went over there one day and saw the movie Shall We Dance? And we got home and wrote our opinions on it. Because by now she was writing opinions too. I don't remember when that started, but she did join. So, yeah. I went there a couple of other times. Because I had in my head I was going to go see this movie Wicker Park. Because this was like 2004 was the year of the memory movies, if I remember right, or like the mind trip movies like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, or The Butterfly Effect or 50 First Dates. All these movies about memory, and stuff. And Wicker Park was kind of like, there wasn't so much about memory, but it was another one of those. It was like a mind trip where they told the story out of order, like Pulp Fiction. There was a lot of that going on at the time. There was like 21 Grams was another movie that was like that. And Memento. And there were tons of them. It was the thing to do in the early aughts, as I might call it. So yeah, Wicker Park was like another one of those. But I never did get around to seeing it there. I wish I had, because that was a nice theater out there. I'll tell you what, I can still remember. I remember like stopping by the Sam Goody on the way out of the movies one day and picking up the CD Underneath by Hanson. It's like, what? What are you doing? I don't know where I got the $17 to blow on that, but I guess there comes a certain point where it's like, you still have to have some standards. You still have to live, in some sense, I guess. So anyway, I pawned off more CDs and DVDs to get by, which I was always doing. And eventually, eventually Mom and Bob started to get at odds with each other. They'd been married 3 years at this point, but he was starting to... See, the thing that happened with Bob, and this is kind of a long story, and I'll try to keep it short, is that he had an injury up there, because he drove a semi for a living, but he had some kind of back injury, and it was stuck, it was backed up in the courts whether or not he was going to get the settlement from his insurance company, because they didn't really believe, or I don't know what happened, it was just backed up in the courts. And according to Mom, and I believe this totally, his injury was not as bad as he was claiming it was. because there were times she saw him working on stuff in the house that there was no way he should have been able to do if he had had as bad of an injury as he was saying he had. But he kept faking this injury because he was trying to get money out of the insurance. And I know she didn't feel right about that. Well, there were some other things too. He was starting to get into like marijuana and stuff. Or some kind of, it might have even been worse than that, I don't know. And so anyways, the things were just getting pretty bad between them. And he was sitting around the house all day and just not doing anything, getting depressed, and they would get into arguments. It's not a good time at all. And I was kind of caught in the middle of it. I was like, okay, what do I do now? Do I stay here? Because then it got to the point where Mom wanted to divorce him and she wanted to leave. Eventually, like I said, everything just kind of fell apart. And I couldn't find a job, and I was mad, and I had my rants. Boy, did I ever have my rants. And, you know, on my tapes and stuff, I was talking about, oh, what is this? They're telling me we couldn't, you know, I had one of those rants where I was like, why couldn't they call now? Or now even? Or why not now? Or how about now? Or now? Every single second that goes by, there should be a distinct, discernible reason why they're not calling. Every single second. You know. But no reason was ever given. So whatever. I just wasn't meant to be there, that's what it was. So, you know, on Christmas morning, or actually it might have been the day after Christmas.
Prepare to keep to the left.
Oh, prepare to keep to the left? Okay. I'll do that then. Oh, here goes this guy again. I'll tell you. I wonder what he's got back there. Horsies or something? Anyway. Yeah, so I picked up an outlet. I don't know, it might have been New Year's Day or something. But anyway, you know, and it was getting to the point where I was starting to miss home. I was missing Wisconsin. I even missed Wisconsin when I was in Virginia, to be honest.
In 3/4 of a mile, please keep to the left and continue to follow I-70.
Alright, you got it. Babe. Toots? Ah! Princess! You throw me a cold one here? I'm drowning. Anyway, alright. Boy, this thing's been going on forever. Yeah, so I packed up my stuff for the 3rd time and got in my tattered car on the morning of December, whatever it was. Okay, I hear you. And I drove back to Wisconsin from Memphis. That's about a 12-hour drive, maybe 14, I don't quite remember. But anyway,